Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Nguyen. I'm political science professor at De Anza College, and I'd like to thank Professor Alicia de Toro for inviting me to this office hour to answer a question from you all. I'm happy to do that as we see how the connections between environmental policies, laws connect to politics, which is my area. So perhaps Professor de Toro, could you repeat that question for students who didn't get it or did not
Sure.
get it?
The question that was posed by the class is, what are the best policies the government can put forth to combat global warming?
That's a big question, and I appreciate it. That sounds like a full course to me, but I'll try to answer it the best I can. A few things come to mind for me in terms of where we're at in this space and time. 2020, we just had an election. Joe Biden is going to be the next president of the United States, starting on January 20th. And so when I think about this question, I think about what's happened the last 4 years, where we are currently, and where we could potentially go. Right. Um, I really think about the Trump administration's policies over the last 4 years as it relates to the environment and climate change. And for me, it could be summed up by just simply both a domestic and international attempt to pull back from the environmental protections and regulations that were put into place during the Obama administration. So, I mean, obviously, a lot of folks talk about the fact that the US pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement very early on in the Trump administration. I think that from an international standpoint, our standing in, because I'm sure Professor Toro is going to tell you that climate and the environment are, local, state, regional, national, international, global issues. It's a global issue on all those levels, right? And it has to be, and governments don't just exist, for the entire world. Although we have a UN, we have to deal with it on a local level, our personal um, responsibility around that in our communities, and then move up to the state and national and then international. So all those different levels have to deal with climate change. And the Paris Climate Agreement would get us signed back on under a Biden administration. Looks like that will be happening early on in his administration. He's already promised after the election happened that one of the first things he wants to do is to sign us back up to the Paris Climate Accord, which essentially would say that the U.S. is rejoining the international community and saying we're going to take part in trying to regulate how much carbon emissions we're going to be releasing as a country in terms of ourselves, and then looking at the entire global picture of, because we have to tackle this together, not just ourselves in the U.S. but also China, Russia, all the biggest emitters. So that's probably job number one for Biden. But a lot of it is really looking backwards, and Biden's new administration is already saying, like, how do we bring back some of the rollbacks that happened during the Trump administration in terms of a lot of the things that Obama had set up to protect the environment. And so a lot of this was done through the executive action of the Trump administration, through executive action and orders, also through the Environmental Protection Agency. So I'm talking more domestically now. Things like the EPA loosening regulations on toxic air pollution, EPA scrapping clean power plans, rescinding methane flaring rules, fuel economy, weakening Obama era fuel economy rules, right? These are just examples. I'll just keep running through more of these domestic issues that the Trump administration rolled back, and the Biden administration is going to be looking to bring back, into regulation. Trump revoked flood standards accounting for sea level rises. What else? The national, I forget, NOAA green lighting seismic air gun blast for oil and gas drilling. Trump administration supporting fracking. And so just a lot of these things. What's another one? In terms of species, companies installing large wind turbines, constructing power lines, or leaving oil exposed under the Trump administration were no longer violating the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So protection of species, how we deal with national monuments and parks, to downsize them and to not protect them as much from, say, drilling and things like that. Calling for sharp logging increases on public lands, One of my favorites, I say tongue in cheek, is Trump dropping climate change from its list of national security threats. Saying that science is not important. They don't believe in science, and so they don't see climate change as an existential threat and a threat to our national security, right? And of course, so Biden's going to be spending a lot of time trying to get us back online with these regulations and trying to get those back and forth. So what people see this as is that Biden has to sort of spend a lot of time and energy to reverse these Trump administration rules. That's going to be part of the work, and then another part of the work is like getting us thinking about what does Biden's Green New Deal look like, right? If we're going to move away from coal and other fossil fuels, then what's this Green New Deal going to look like? And he's already said that the plan that's been supported by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, as she's also known as, he's not going to go as far as they want to go, them being progressives and climate being a major issue of theirs. So it'll probably be a scaled back version of the Green New Deal, where will the jobs be? What types of industries will it be in? And so I think that that's something that you all can take a look at, is what is Biden's Green New Deal plan? And what do you think of it? So that's sort of the things I just want to leave you with is looking back at what's happened the last 4 years, where the Biden administration might be looking in terms of the past 4 years and the regulations that were lifted in many cases and caused environmental degradation. And then also looking forward, what is Biden going to do in terms of the environment? He's shown that he's going to be a moderate, I think. He's not going to go as far as a Green New Deal that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for. He's called for his own Green New Deal. And so I think that bears to see if he can get something like that passed through Congress.
Thank you, Jim. You're amazing. I had an idea and I just wanted to check and see if it was okay with you. What if we put the Google form with the question link in the comments of the YouTube? So anyone who watches and wants to
Sure.
submit a question,
Yeah.
they can just put it there.
Yeah. As long as you can send me that link or connect me to questions.
Yeah, I'll add you.
Yeah.
And that way we can just see what comes in and we'll just keep them rolling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I just want to quickly add that I think the political situation is going to be dicey for Biden. I think he's going to be, the Senate's going to be pretty split no matter what happens in Georgia in this runoff coming up. Democrats have a weaker majority in the House than they did before the election. Republicans are still in many cases being led by Trump and his supporters. And so they seem to be dictating what's going to be happening, even if they're not in power in that sense. And then you have progressives on the left of Biden who are pushing him to be more progressive and more bold in his policy plans. And so he's going to have a lot of people kind of, pushing on him. He's going to get pushed around a lot, and he's going to have to find a way through that. It's going to be difficult politically.
So what do you suggest for students that feel energized and want to get involved and want to do something?
Yeah, I think we had probably a couple dozen of our students, volunteers who did service learning hours, make calls to swing states during the election or leading up to the election day. Called states like Georgia and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan and Nevada, Arizona, all these states that were in play towards the end there. And I think that we did make a difference in that final result. And I'm taking volunteers now for any student who needs hours or who just wants to make calls to Georgia for the Senate runoff. So I will connect students to training and then help them with their hours, get them signed off. But we're making a difference, writing letters, sending postcards. And I think environmentally, in terms of climate change, I think the push is going to still be the same, even if it doesn't matter who's in power. I think that we want to make sure that policies that will support good, clean environment, positive climate change, seeing that it's an issue, listening to the science, and coming up with something that is beneficial for everyone. Companies, people on the ground, people in poverty included. I think there's a way there, and so I think that we continue to, pressure our elected officials whether it's by rallies, whether it's by writing letters and calls. Um, it's staying engaged in the political process. It's doing, creek cleanups in your neighborhood. It's staying informed of what's happening, what policies are being considered, whenever anything is being considered that you like. Contact your representatives and say you support that and you want them to vote for it. If that's the case, support organizations, maybe interest groups. I like Sierra Club. Greenpeace. I've worked with a little bit in the past. So these interest groups they have a lot of money. You can join them for a small fee, $20 a year, and you get magazines. And that money pays for lobbyists to go and push some of these undecided, elected officials on these issues. And they're the ones who you can really turn your advocacy, not just, voting in November, but, putting your money where your mouth is, and, basically expressing yourself with your feet too when you protest. I mean, those are to me the ways in which you get involved in democracy. It's not just voting. So if we keep that effort up, I feel good about the future. I feel good that, even though I do believe, and Professor, you might agree too, that some of the effects of climate change are already irreversible at this stage. But
Yes.
it doesn't mean that we can't, starting now, do something real to, stop that and then start reversing that. So that, there is a future for us and our kids and our grandkids.
Mhm. And to lessen the burden and the strife that will be felt by, we can prevent a lot of the damage that will be felt by
Yeah.
people
Yeah. I
if
mean,
we strategize correctly and we heed the warnings and we listen to the science and we implement good policy and make good choices and we
that's
work
right.
together and have compassion and practice resiliency.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is one of those things where it's a money thing too. If you're a corporation, you care about making money. I know I'm, putting them into a box there, but I mean, if you care about making money, I mean, if there's no environment left, then how are you going to make money, right? And if you don't contribute to helping, reduce the wildfires in California, what you're doing is, your actions are inadvertently perhaps causing harm to the environment that might be contributing to these wildfires, then, it's like it might be your own existential threat too, right? There might be an existential threat to your business, to your future earnings, and it's going to cost us more money to have to fix these things on the back end. It's like medicine. It's like you want to be preventative as much as possible, right? And so I
Yeah.
think if we take that approach, then I think that everybody wins. It doesn't have to be like, well, if people in the environment win, then companies lose. I don't really think that that's really accurate.